Welcome to Making Worlds, conversations about imagining otherwise. I'm Hannah McGregor, and on this show, I talk to cool people about fantasy, sci-fi, speculative fiction, magical realism, and other genres that let us envision different possibilities for how the world could be. For this episode, I have invited our in-house editor, digital projects coordinator, and self-proclaimed fanfic aficionado, Gaby, to talk about Interview with the Vampire and fanfiction. Gaby, pronouns she, they, is a born and bred North Carolinian? I've simply never seen that word before. Currently living in Baltimore with her partner and 2 cats. She is a publicist at Quirk Books and the digital projects coordinator for Witch Please Productions, where she is also the video editor and associate producer for Making Worlds, this very show. So if you notice some real extra sparkly editing happening on this one, you know who to thank. She is a writer, home cook, and storyteller, and she wants to make you laugh. In this episode, we are talking about the AMC adaptation of Interview with the Vampire. So if you want to totally avoid spoilers, I recommend you go and watch the first 2 episodes, because that's as far as I have gotten into my watch. So that's as far as we're going to get into our discussion.
Okay, welcome to Making Worlds. Hi.
Welcome to Making Worlds.
I love this show. It's my favorite video podcast. I heard the editor is hot.
Hot and slutty.
Hot, slutty, and talented. That's me.
Hi, Gaby. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Hannah. Thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to talk about how formative it was for me personally to be an Anne Rice reader as a teenager, but also more generally, I guess Anne Rice as queer root and the recent new adaptation of Interview with the Vampire on AMC.
On AMC.
So, Gaby, tell me about your relationship with Interview with the Vampire and Anne Rice prior to the AMC adaptation.
Absolutely. So when I was in college, I went to a historic women's college, which is
gay.
Code for gay. And I spent 2 years there, and I took a vampire literature class my sophomore year. Yeah. And I read some of the most depraved bullshit imaginable. But then I also
vampire
read
literature for you, baby.
That's vampire literature. But then I also read Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice.
Sorry, you weren't including that in the most depraved shit imaginable.
Well, sure, I was. But some of the other stuff was really depraved. So I read Interview with the Vampire through a literary lens, because I wasn't necessarily looking for queerness in it. I was looking for themes of vampirism, which then it turned out is queerness. And then we watched the movie, which was also depraved in different ways. I truly think that Tom Cruise committed. I mean, he committed to being Lestat. I think Brad Pitt could have been replaced with a pegboard and would have gotten the same effect. Sorry about it.
That's how I feel about most Brad Pitt performances.
Yeah, honestly. And quite frankly, don't tell anyone we don't like Brad Pitt on the gay show. On the gay show, we don't like Brad Pitt.
God, okay. Everybody's gonna be so mad at us.
Oh man, I hate Tom Cruise also, but it's a testament to how camp his Lestat was.
Yeah, and Lestat is a camp character, isn't he? But I'm getting ahead of myself. So you read that one book and then were hooked and read more, or never came back to them?
We're done reading vampires. Right. I read 12 vampire books in a semester. I was like, if I never read another one, it'll be too soon. So then I'm 25 now, so a couple years passed.
25?
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, I forgot you're such a little baby.
I am.
I forgot how truly intergenerational our friendship is. we have almost the age difference of Rory and Lorelai in Gilmore Girls. Okay, so you're 25.
I'm 25, and I keep seeing these little memes on the internet of the two stars of AMC's Interview with the Vampire, Jacob Anderson, who plays Louis, and Sam Reed, who plays Lestat. And they just look so in love all the time, the actors. And a photo of them. I can't remember whose arm is around the others, but the like drug information for PrEP is underneath it. I'll put it here when I edit the episode. And I was like, that shit's funny. And so I had been meeting, everyone is saying it's, it's the best show on television. If you're not watching Interview with the Vampire, what are you even doing? And I said, well, I gotta know what everyone is talking about. And so Megan and I, my girlfriend, watched both the first season and half of season 2 like in a weekend because season 2 was still airing. Yeah. So we caught up, and then we watched the last half of the second season live, which was fun.
So have you gone back and read any more Anne Rice, or are you still a one and done Anne Rice reader?
I did try to reread Interview with the Vampire, and I think if anyone wants to find my Goodreads, you can find an update that says something along the lines of Jacob Anderson has led me to places most people wouldn't go with a gun, because I was rereading it. I was like, damn, this is crazy. This is crazy. This is racist. This is not my boy. Look at how they massacred my boy. But I do think this might be a spoiler, but the third season of the show is going to be an adaptation of The Vampire Lestat.
Okay, so they're done with the events of the first book and the first 2 seasons.
Yes. So I think because Lestat is so campy, and Anne Rice famously has a raging hard-on for him, I like Lestat specifically. Mm-hmm. I want to read The Vampire Lestat, and I've read bits and pieces of Queen of the Damned as well.
So you're coming into this as a fan of adaptations of this world more than you are the original.
Yeah. Totally.
So I come from totally the opposite. Like, I was an OG. I mean, not OG. I wasn't alive in 1976 when it came out, but I was like a tried and true Anne Rice Vampire Chronicles reader. Like, read a lot of them, including ones where it was like, now it's ancient Greece and there are some vampires here, like, really, I followed her. I actually liked her so much that I read one of her sister's books.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not everyone can say that.
Not everyone can say that, and that's true. And so I actually just started watching this adaptation because you told me to. And immediately, like, I don't know, within half an hour of starting the first episode, texted you and was like, oh, it's gay.
So gay.
Because I thought maybe it was gay like Challengers was gay, which is like the vibes were gay, but the actual homosexuality was not present.
The homosexuality is present.
It's present, and it's explicit, and like it is like they say the phrase homosexual multiple times in the first episode. Like, I was not expecting it to be canonically and explicitly about two men being in love with each other.
Yeah, and fucking. Like, to be clear, they are fucking.
Yeah.
They are having gay levitating vampire sex.
Gay levitating vampire sex really early on. They sleep in the same coffin, and Lestat says that Louis can be on top. Like, yeah, like they're doing it. And that's exciting, obviously, for a variety of reasons, including that that original series is like kind of textbook queer baiting, in the sense that like the subtext of vampires is very frequently queer, Maybe your course can explain some of why that is. I don't. I frankly haven't delved into it, but it is frequently queer. But in Anne Rice's novels, vampires don't like sex. Like, they are sexless. They enjoy blood, and so they're quite erotic, but they're never having actual sex. So it means that you can have the sort of queer undertone of Lestat turning Louis, but they don't actually fuck. But in this show they are.
Oh, they're fucking.
They are, for everybody. They're fucking.
And honestly, I could do with more. They could fuck more. It's kind of like, this is again maybe a spoiler, but they have this crazy gay levitating vampire sex in the first episode, and then there's no more nudity. What the fuck? Take those clothes off. No, I'm kidding. Or am I? But I think it kind of goes to what you said. Anne Rice was very sexless, and her vampires were not interested in the body other than as a vessel for blood. So they weren't interested in deriving pleasure from the body, except for the pleasure that comes along with satiating hunger. And that's like completely the opposite in the AMC series I've found. I think there's an emphasis on, especially in that first episode, towards the turning scene when Lestat turns Louis. He says, I want you to be all the beautiful things that you are. And it's a very, they're at a church. The turning is happening on an altar. It's very reverent. It's almost like marriage, some might say. Mm-hmm. And it's a very, they kiss, like, it's a very explicitly queer moment. And, there's a lot to be said about Catholicism's presence in Interview with the Vampire, and Catholicism in general, with the body and the blood. That's kind of all meshed up with Lestat and Louis' relationship. Mm-hmm. Because Lestat wanted to jump Louis' bones from the moment he saw him. And I think the feeling is mutual, even if Louis isn't quite sure about that. And I feel like we'll probably talk about their first sex scene later. But that also is a scene totally like for pleasure, that blood is secondary.
Yeah, absolutely. That satisfying their hunger is a thing. Like, in the second episode, Lestat says, like, at first drinking is like just unpleasant, and like you'll come to appreciate the sort of subtle variances from experience to experience, but like it really is functional. Like, what we are here for is another kind of pleasure. Okay, so let's get into fanfic, because was it watching the series that then made you go seek out Interview with the Vampire fanfic?
Yes, I have been a fanfic girly for years, like a long time. But I wasn't reading the book back in college and being like, oh, I need to see these guys bang, because to me they were two white dudes in the 1700s, and that's not necessarily what I wanted at that period of time.
Weird.
Yeah, crazy. Yeah. I was also straight at the time, if you can believe it.
No, I don't, but I believe you thought you were.
I guess it's important for audiences to know, if they're not familiar with AMC's version. Obviously, it's gay, but...
Oh, I thought you were going to say it's important for the audience to know that you are gay.
Right. And guys, just so we're clear, I'm gay, I'm a homosexual, have been for a while. Just like the vampires on AMC's Interview with the Vampire.
That is how I would like you to introduce yourself in the future. Hey, just so you know, just like the vampires in AMC's adaptation of Interview with the Vampire, I'm gay.
Okay. It's important for audiences to know that in addition to these vampires obviously being queer, as we've mentioned, Louis is a Black Creole man. And he owns a brothel in town in New Orleans, and is somewhat respected as a businessman.
Yeah.
So in that way, the show itself is kind of fanfic of the original source material, because something that I love about fan fiction is how people will take these characters and make them fit a world that they have imagined. By making Louis Black, it adds some additional complexity to his character that wasn't present in the books or in the movie. And there's also like an inherent power dynamic between him and Lestat, who is a white French man. Yeah. What was the question?
It was about you seeking out fan fiction based on watching the series. Yeah, because you watch the series and you go, oh, how interesting. This is itself an adaptation that is engaging with a lot of the kinds of tropes of fan fiction. And then you said, more please.
More please. I mean, that's pretty much what it was. I'm someone who I'm not really a person who likes stuff normally. I tend to go all in. I'm pretty obsessive medically. And I wanted more. I was fascinated not only by the dynamic of Louis and Lestat, but also of Louis and Daniel, the interviewer. I just wanted to see how people were interpreting these relationships. And also I wanted to see them fuck nasty some more. Why lie? Why lie?
Yeah, okay. Can you talk a little bit more about your relationship to fanfic? Because I'm fascinated by it as a world, and I've never been a reader myself.
I was going to ask if you ever read or wrote, but it seems like no.
I've neither read nor wrote. I engage a lot with like character art, like very frequently, and have done some of that fan art myself, or like a really short, like 2 or 3 panel fan comic shared somewhere I will engage with. But fan fiction, when I have spent time with it, I found it overwhelming. And I don't just mean in the sense of like there's so much of it I don't know what to do with it, but that like taking what happens within a narrative and then like breaking it open and being like, and now anything could happen, like freaks me out.
Yeah, fair.
I'm like, that's actually too many possibilities, and I actually just need there to be one.
It's so reasonable.
I don't know if it is, but like I'm like thinking this through right now. I'm like, what has it? But like, it's not, because like I will happily read a thing that has like taken up another text and done something. I'm thinking of like Rainbow Rowell's Carry On, right? Like that is for sure just fan fiction, but not just, but that is for sure fan fiction. And but it then creates its own world with its own internal rules and restrictions. And I think I maybe like being in worlds that are in some way restricted.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I get that, and I get it being overwhelming. There being too many options, too many. Yeah, for sure. I feel like I, like most people my young age, I'm 25, by the way.
Yeah, a little baby.
I'm a little baby. I'm 25. Grew up with Harry Potter fan fiction. But I think the first fanfic I ever read and engaged with was Castle. Did anyone ever watch Castle?
I absolutely watched Castle.
I read some Castle fanfic back in the day, and that kind of like opened that, plus anything else that I could get my hands on kind of opened my eyes to the fact that the story doesn't have to end after, you know, you turn the TV off or you finish the book or whatever. So I went through a phase in my teens when I might have been like very early teens, where I was on Tumblr all the time. I was reading fanfic. I was also very Catholic, so I would feel guilty after I read anything that was remotely horny. And then I would be like, okay, well, no more of that. Because being horny sends you to jail.
Being horny does send you to jail. Yeah.
So then I grew up. I grew up and I became a slut. No, I'm just kidding. I grew up and I was like, I'm not Catholic anymore. And it doesn't seem like Catholicism and fan fiction should be linked, but to me they were, because I was able to let go of a lot of the guilt that was associated with consuming stuff that wasn't canon. Because to me, I was like, I'm ruining, if I read something smutty or out of character, I'm tainting the experience that I have with this media that I love, the original media. And again, then I grew up and was like, no, I'm not. So I got back into it in a big way a couple years ago. I was really big on Succession. I'm going to say I read and I wrote a lot of Succession fan fiction.
You wrote Succession fan fiction. What happens in your Succession fan fiction?
It's sex. They have sex.
Okay. I don't know if this is the break point between the two segments.
I haven't made it easy.
But I want to talk about why fan fiction is so gay even when it's not gay.
So many gay people consume fan fiction and write it as a way of exploring their identity. And, you know, when you recognize that something is a little different in yourself, we tend to latch on to fiction, whether that's books, TV, video games, whatever. Pick your text, pick your media. And it feels natural to me. It felt natural to latch on to more of that, to get more however I could. And then, you know, you learn more about so much stuff while you're browsing fanfiction.net or LiveJournal or Archive of Our Own. And it's an interesting place to explore your queerness, because a lot of these people, they're not real. quite frankly, they're not real. Yeah, I don't know. It feels very gay to be so invested in something that's not real.
It feels gay to be invested in something that's not real, and that is the premise of this whole show. So to go back to our actual, text in this case, what in particular about the explicit queering of Interview with the Vampire was so resonant for you?
I mean, I think the fact that it was like, it is a fanfic writer's dream to see like a race bent, sexual orientation bent version of this world. It's important context to know that Anne Rice famously hated fan fiction of her characters. She sent cease and desists to people who wrote it. Fanfiction.net, which was AO3's predecessor, they also received a C&D that was like, you need to take anything involving Anne Rice's characters down or she'll sue. So it feels like a very powerful, like, fuck off to her. She's certainly in hell. Absolutely, she's in hell, and she's looking up.
No such thing, Gabby.
You're right. But if there was, she'd be in it.
For sure. Yeah.
And so she'd be looking up, furious that they have made Louis Black and very explicitly queer. And so to me, it feels very, it just feels very liberating to see her characters doing that. And also, it just feels very radical to have a Black gay man having explicit sex on television.
Yeah.
I don't say that in a horny way. I mean, it's genuinely, I don't really think we see that happening a lot.
No, especially not in like mainstream prestige TV.
Right. You
Yeah.
see a lot of white people having sex, and you
Yeah.
see some white gay people having sex, but not so much not so much a Black Creole man in the 1800s doing it. It's pretty niche.
And yet, in this case, profoundly not niche because this is a successful mainstream show. Okay, I've got two things I'm pondering here. Let's start with what's the relationship between a race bent and queer adaptation of Interview with the Vampire versus like finding new IP, right? I think about this a lot when we're like, how do we do adaptations well in an era where it seems like nobody can actually tell a new story? And so is this like a sort of space within the media production world where like something radical can happen by sticking with adaptation but drawing on the sort of more radical possibilities of adaptation that the fan fiction community has normalized in a lot of ways? um or is it a way of saying like we're gonna just keep doing the same material, like versus adapting the material, or like just hiring people to write new stories?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, I think it leans more towards the former because, well, it's difficult because the show is, it's different in the ways that we've already mentioned, in the fact that it has a different twist on race and sexuality, but it also, the frame story is completely different in the show than it is in the book. So there are some fundamentally different plot elements that I think lend itself to making it feel more original than it is,
Mm.
which I think is interesting. But then, of course, the question of, well, why don't you just write something new, is there. And I think there's this idea of reclaiming something that has not been for us,
Mm.
for queer people, for people of color, which I think is being done really excellently in the show, because it does not, and I say this as a white person, so any people of color watching this can tell me I'm full of it, but I think it does a really wonderful job of, not centering the white characters in the show.
Mm.
The first two seasons are very much Louis' story, in a way that feels more authentic than even in the book. I don't know how else to explain it.
I mean, part of it is definitely that the TV show is spending more time with the fact of it being an interview than the novel ever really does, and certainly than the movie adaptation did. Like, in many ways, it's just kind of a conceit, like a little frame, like cute frame conceit to be like, oh, he's in the present day and he's, a journalist is interviewing him. But but we have in the adaptation a lot more time spent with the relationship between Louis and his interviewer. What's the interviewer's name?
Daniel, my beloved.
Daniel. Daniel. Um and Daniel's a more like in the original, the journalist is very young and inexperienced, and this in this Daniel is older and sick and on the other side of a really hard sobriety journey. And so it's bringing a lot of other, like, complicating factors into the experience of being the person telling the story. And there's a lot more explicit sort of battling over control of the narrative happening between Louis and Daniel.
Yes, absolutely. It's also, this is the second interview that Daniel and Louis have had. Daniel is now in his 70s, and I can't remember if you hear this in the first episode or not, but either he or Louis plays the old tape.
Yeah, you hear it in the first episode.
Okay. So they had an interview back in 1973 in San Francisco when Daniel was a much younger man, and you hear him saying that he wants the vampire gift, he wants the dark gift, and Louis attacks him, which is how the book ends. Spoiler alert. So this second interview is a do-over in many ways. Daniel is nearing the end of his life. He has Parkinson's. It's the pandemic. It starts in 2020, which was a bleak way to begin.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a really interesting way of exploring control, like you said, aging. I think it's just a really fascinating take on the interview concept. There's so much more weight placed on it, and there's even more weight placed on it later in the season, which I won't spoil.
Okay, we've been talking about Interview with the Vampire and your previous relationship to Succession. And I just want to close out by asking you what your current fan fiction obsession is.
Oh boy. I mean, I'm still reading a lot of Interview. That door has not closed yet, but I was also reading and writing a lot of Challengers fanfic.
Oh, did somebody finally make that as gay as it needed to be?
Yeah, me.
Good.
I did.
Oh, and that's the Lord's work.
That's the Lord's work. That's God's way.
Yeah, and that's what the Catholics want.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, get ready. It's time for some Anne Rice trivia.
Oh God. Okay.
Okay. Question 1. Are you ready?
I guess.
Which pseudonym has Anne Rice written under? These are all multiple choice. Is it A, Anne Rampling, B, Annalise Rasling, C, Anne Randleberg, or D, A.N. Rockwelair?
The Rampling one?
Yeah.
Yeah. I did read her Wikipedia.
Also, Rockwelair.
Wow.
I think that's the name she used to write the Sleeping Beauty erotic trilogy.
She was a freak too.
She was an absolute freak. There's so much. That's the first erotica I ever read because I was such an Anne Rice girly. There's so much spanking in those books. Like there's a sports event where they dress up the sex slaves like horses and then they spank them around a track. Like they sort of spank. Anyway, I did a spank gesture and I knocked my water over. I'll be right back.
God, I feel bad for the editor for this episode.
Question 2. Which Anne Rice book was almost adapted into a movie by James Cameron? Was it A, The Mummy, B, Servant of the Bones, C, Exit to Eden, or D, Angel Time?
I know it's not Angel Time, but I'm going to say Angel Time because I like to say it. I have no idea.
Wrong. It's The Mummy. Question 3. How much was the advance Anne Rice received for Interview with the Vampire? A, $2,000. B, $12,000. C, $50,000. D, $5,000. Remember, it's 1976.
Right. I'm going to say 2,000.
Incorrect. It was 12,000.
Are you serious? $12,000. Wow. Good. Go off.
Next question. I've lost track of the numbers. What is Anne Rice's zodiac sign?
Are you fucking kidding me?
A, Scorpio. B, Pisces. C, Cancer. D, Libra. Really think about this one.
Pisces? Cancer? Libra?
She's a Libra.
See, that surprises me because I feel like she put so much of herself into Lestat, and Lestat is such a fucking crybaby.
Oh, Libras are total crybabies. Are you kidding?
Yeah, I guess you're right. You're right.
Lestat is such a Libra. Like, girl, he isn't flirting with you. He's just a Libra. Who did Anne Rice envision playing Lestat in the movie? A, Rutger Hauer. B, Daniel Day-Lewis. C, John Voight. D, Richard Gere.
I'm picturing a John.
Just John Voight led. Yeah, it's really something.
Richard Gere?
Try again.
I already forgot the others.
It was Rutger Hauer, and I need you right now to Google young Rutger Hauer and tell me that she wasn't, like, totally right.
Oh, yeah. I do see that.
Yeah, you see it, right?
It's that jaw.
Yeah, and those eyes.
You gotta have a jaw and a chin and eyes to play Lestat.
Classically, you gotta have a whole face. In the film adaptation of Interview with the Vampire, who was originally cast to play Daniel, the reporter? Was it A, Brendan Fraser, B, River Phoenix, C, Johnny Depp, or D, Robert Downey Jr.?
I do think it was River Phoenix.
Sure was. Well, you got, I think 2 right. Well, thanks for coming on, Gabby.
Hey, it's my pleasure. Sorry I said the things I said.
Making Worlds is a Witch Please production. Thank you to our wonderful patrons for making this show, as well as Material Girls, possible. If you want more Witch Please Productions content, head over to our website at ohwitchplease.ca to access transcripts, reading lists, and merch. We also have a whole other show called Gender Playground that is hosted by our beloved Marcel Cosman and Rami Marks. Gender Playground is a podcast that is dedicated to the joys of gender-affirming care for kids, and you can listen to it wherever you get your podcasts. You can also follow us on Instagram and X at ohwitchplease and on TikTok at ohwitchpleasepod. We also have a Substack where you can read our monthly newsletter, The Monthly Hoot, and our special behind the episode content. A big thank you to the folks behind the scenes, producer Zoe Mix, associate producer and editor Gaby Iori, executive producer Hannah Rehack, aka Coach, and Marcel Cosman, co-founder of Witch Please Productions. Special thanks also to Jay Arner and Jessica Delisle, who wrote our theme song, and of course to Zoe for designing our beautiful logo. We'll be back next month to talk about a whole new piece of media that asks us to imagine otherwise. Until then, subscribe to our YouTube channel for bonus content and tell your friends about how horny this episode was. You're welcome.
Oh, it was so horny.